It's Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we're covering on today's episode. It is today, where we get to see what Samsung is going to offer with their latest line of products at the Galaxy Unpacked event. We'll walk through what we expect and what we'd like to see. And we've got a non-stop run of guests for you today, starting off with Emily Shalal, the Senior Director of Consumer Strategy and Innovation with Ally Bank, to discuss their engaging platforms. And Wendy Gonzalez, the interim CEO of Samasource, will discuss the increasing use of artificial intelligence and why the adoption of an ethical use of data is imperative going forward. And did you know that it's Safer Internet Day? Well, that's what Teresa DeSuyo of Qustodio will be joining to talk about, in addition to their app, which is designed to help you balance your family's digital well-being while also creating awareness as to who's tracking your online activity. All of this and more on today's episode of Digital Trends Live. Well, hello everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us, of course, broadcasting live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and so much more. All while broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Dailymotion, Apple News, 2 different mobile apps, a smart television app, and at digitaltrends.com/live. So wherever you're watching, you can join in the conversations that we get to have here. And we're going to have some conversations right now. To start it off, I'm Greg Nibbler here with Adrienne Warner. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited for all the news today.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. And as we said, we are live, so you can drop in your comments if you want to join in the conversations that we get to have. But let's start it off with this. It's the big day for Samsung. So Galaxy Unpacked finally here. One of the biggest press conferences that we've had this year, obviously. I mean, we had CES, now it's this. MWC, maybe. But we're talking about Samsung today, and that is something with, when it comes to this, you know, this is when they announced their new line of phones in the S10 line. We're going to kind of walk through what we expect from this, but definitely a big day for them today.
Oh yeah, absolutely huge. So yeah, this biannual event, we expect to see more about the Galaxy Flip, which we saw a little bit of during the Academy Awards the other day. They actually teased a 30-second preview of the phone. So I think it'll be really exciting to see it in hand and a little bit more information about that device as well.
Yeah, and that's one that we didn't know for sure if they were actually going to unveil here.
Right.
There was a lot of talk up to even just a few days ago before the Academy Awards that they may push this off until later on to unveil it, because, you know, the last time, as we know, the Samsung Galaxy Fold, they unveiled this last year around April, and it didn't roll out so well. You know, they had a lot of issues that came on with that. So there was talk that maybe they would just hold off on this until they're 100% sure, but it looks like they're sure. And it's that different style. It's got that clamshell shape, looks very similar to the Motorola Razr,
Right.
which just came out. So that may be part of the reason why they're trying to jump on it and get it out
I
there.
think so too, with all of the buzz that's coming around, people reviewing the Motorola Razr. I think they're really wanting to get that in front of people and show off this cool new video call feature where you can flip it half up, which is cool.
Right, and I think, you know, with something like this, that's what I'm excited to see today, and that's what we kind of wanted to walk through. We've got lots of guides at Digital Trends too, but I'm excited to see what they showcase with like the software side of things when it comes to that, because when we're talking about these foldable devices, what are you actually going to use them for?
Right, yeah.
You know?
What's the UX that's going into these new devices, and what exactly, how can we utilize that really cool technology that they're making?
Yeah, so we've got that, the Samsung Z Flip.
The Z Flip, the S line, like you mentioned before, which they're dropping the E from for the S10e, and that's going to be the S20 line, is what I read online.
Yeah, it's a lot that's coming out with that. So there's the S20, like just skipping up 10 versions, and I think it's just to match with the year. So it's not 10 times better or twice as good. However you want to do the math on that, I'll leave that to the math wizards. But nonetheless, the S20 is what we're talking about with this. So Galaxy S20, and then S20 Plus and S20 Ultra is what we're expecting.
Yeah, one of them is supposed to have, it's rumored to have a 108 megapixel main lens out of 4 lenses on the camera. So this is going to be, I mean, the cameras in these devices keep getting better and better. That's what I'm always really excited about, is the camera technology that comes out in these.
Yeah, and so we'll have to see, you know, how that all shakes out, what kinds of things we get to see with that. I'm hoping maybe some other features too, but just walking down what we're going to see. We're expecting the Samsung Galaxy Home Mini, because again, that's already leaked online because we've seen pictures of it. What does this mean for the Samsung Galaxy Home? Something they promised a year and a half ago that we still haven't actually seen. Well, we'll have to wait
Question,
and
Greg.
yeah, see what they roll out with it. I mean, that's one of the things with these events. Sometimes there's going to be some surprises. I'm expecting maybe some Galaxy Buds.
Yeah.
The improvement on those.
Yeah,
Galaxy
those
Buds
were
Plus.
kind of a hit last year. So we're excited to see, what developments they could add to that. Galaxy Buds Plus, like you mentioned. Maybe updates to the Samsung Galaxy Watch.
Possibly,
as well.
Yeah, I could see that, especially on the heels of Google picking up Fitbit and how many numbers have come out about how big the Apple Watch is. I mean, it's just dominating that wearables side of things when it comes to the watches, smartwatches. So maybe Samsung's got something up their sleeve, if you will, to showcase on that. And that one, that's going to be in a highlight reel. That clip I just did right there. But that's so the Samsung Galaxy Watch. That's something that maybe we'll get to see. Maybe we won't. What I'm hoping for.
Yeah. What are you excited about?
I want to see more augmented reality features.
Ooh.
When they had
that might be a big ask.
Well, they had when they did the Note event last September, October, whenever that actually was, they did showcase some pretty cool features with that. And I'm hoping with these new cameras, since like you said, that's one of the big things that comes out with this, that we'll get to see some more of those software side of things. And Google also made an announcement saying that they've got something big for this event today too. So that's going to be exciting.
That's exciting. Yeah, some sort of integration on the horizon.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, you can tune in at 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be streaming it on the site as well. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have a live watch party right here so you can join in and watch it as it happens with us for that Samsung event. All right, moving on though, we've got some other things to talk about and something that we've been not wanting to talk about, but you have to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So, in more mobile news, Mobile World Congress is kind of really close, hot in the heels of the Samsung Unpacked event. It's less than 2 weeks away, but major companies continue to pull out of the show due to fears surrounding the coronavirus. So we just found out that Intel and Vivo have withdrawn from the conference. Vivo owns mobile phone companies Oppo and OnePlus, and they're joining a huge list of other companies that have already pulled out. Huge tech companies such as Sony, Amazon, LG, Ericsson, NVIDIA. TCL is going to skip their press conference entirely. So this is kind of a wave of, hesitance around this conference, and we're starting to see some of the reaction from the organizing company behind it. They're going to take a vote on Friday whether or not to hold the conference at all.
Yeah, so a lot happening there. When you talk about big companies like LG and Sony and Ericsson, NVIDIA, I mean, those are huge players when it comes to this event alone, and let alone some of the other ones too. I mean, Amazon, they don't make their own phones, but they're definitely a big part of what goes on with Mobile World Congress. And that's why when you see big players like that pull out, it takes away a lot from an event like this. And there's also some other ones just internationally that maybe aren't well known here, but Ericsson, I mean, they're the manufacturers of Nokia. We've got NTT Docomo, which a lot of people don't know that maybe here, but that is one of the major Japanese telecommunications company. They're pulling out. And so when you have all of that and putting so much strain on this event to even keep pace, and you mentioned some of the things that they were doing, GSMA, which is the organization that puts on MWC, they had already instituted some different things like encouraging people not to shake hands.
Right.
Changing out the
no
mics.
handshake policy. Yeah, changing mics between speakers, setting up security and medical service 24 hours surrounding the event. But you do have to wonder whether or not it is worth it without these giant tech companies showing up, whether it's worth all of this arrangement around these this medical protection and all of these processes. So we're going to have to see, and I'm we're going to be waiting a little bit with bated breath on whether this will happen at all.
Yeah, the fact that they're even going to be holding a vote is big. I mean, naturally, they don't want this to go away. I mean, there's one estimate that I looked at that this is about a €500 million impact that this has just on Barcelona and just with this event. So I mean, that's a very, very big, a lot of money goes into this.
Exactly. It spreads out, to small businesses, that the tourism that comes with this event. You have to think about something like CES. If CES were to be canceled, what a major impact that would have on the tech world in general.
Huge. Yeah. Huge. And this is just a small part of this. And I know, the humanitarian side is awful, so we're not trying to discount that. I'm just discussing some of the other, we're just kind of walking over some of these other things that are actually happening. And there is a lot. There is another thing as well that as of right now, all travelers coming from China or who had visited China within 14 days of the event which we're now at 13, will not be allowed into the conference. So that means anybody who was coming from China to the event, as of now, if it were still to go, they would have already had to have left 2 days ago in order to even be allowed into the event, because 14 days is what the estimation is for the incubation period where you could be contagious with coronavirus and not even know that you have it. So a lot to figure out with that. And like we were talking about, they're having this vote on Friday, whether they'll decide. We still have essentially 3 more days to even see what other companies decide to pull out. But I would say I would give it about a 50-50 shot right now.
It's looking a little bleak. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so some big decisions that have to be made on that. Going from that, though, looking at some of the other effects of coronavirus, naturally this is getting into everything. Going to look at a couple of the lighter side of things, I guess, if you could talk about it with that. And I'm talking about a robot in New York that was put out to help determine if you're suffering from the effects of the coronavirus. This is from a company called Promobot, and we've talked about Promobot here on the show before.
You have?
Yeah.
Have you talked to Promobot?
I have not talked to Promobot, but this company, they're the ones that make those lifelike, like Arnold Schwarzenegger
this thing
robots.
is huge. I mean, it's 5 foot. It's a 5 foot tall droid, and it was already seen a couple days ago in New York Times Square handing out surgical masks. So it reappeared in Bryant Park, and it had a questionnaire for people, asking them if they had had a fever within the past couple of days, educating people on warning signs about the coronavirus. But it did get kicked out. The plug did get pulled.
Yeah, they decided not to allow this in there because, I mean, this isn't an actually sanctioned health robot. It was just running around asking questions of people.
Or rolling around.
Rolling around, yeah, rolling around. That would be
if it was running, that would be terrifying.
Well, this company in particular, and they're from Pennsylvania right now. I put in quotations. It's a Russian robotics company.
Wow.
It is. But they're coming up with some pretty interesting things. But I guess just looking at that and kind of extrapolating, when do we get to the point where robots are the ones that we interact with? We do know, like even in some of the hospitals right now, they're utilizing robotics, like actual doctors are utilizing robotics to avoid exposure to these patients who are affected by coronavirus. But that one's going just a little bit too far. Now, I will say, talking about the masks, there is a shortage on masks.
Yeah,
happening right now.
there is a huge shortage on masks, and you know what? Companies that make face masks for dogs have experienced a huge spike in sales due to this worldwide surgical mask shortage. So an Austin-based canine mask company called Canine Mask told USA Today that they had seen a 300% jump in business over the past couple of days because people are buying a huge amount of these. And, they're not claimed to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. What they're meant for is, protect your dog from air pollution. And, it's kind of like a soft little muzzle, I guess.
I know that you've got a dog, Adrian.
I've got a dog.
You've got Charlie. Are you going to get Charlie one of these masks?
If we had a really bad fire season again next year, I would definitely consider it because it's really sad when your dog starts to do that inward sneezing thing.
Oh, yeah, that is. I mean, I get, how important, it is for face masks. I just find it a little bit funny that the spike in sales is because of the coronavirus.
Well, you have to wonder whether people are buying them for their dog or for themselves. Although I don't know how it would fit on a human face. It does look like it's made for, like a snout. But still, I don't know. People might get a wild hair. It's not uncommon for human viruses to transfer to dogs, but it's not super common either.
Right. Yeah, it's fairly rare. There's no evidence so far that the coronavirus
no proven connection that coronavirus can spread to our cats and dogs or other pets, rabbits, bunnies.
But regardless, get your canine mask right there from that company.
Hey, support American business. There you go.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that is just a little bit of news there, just kind of covering some of the big stories that are going on. There's a lot happening. One other thing I'll let you know of note, on our site right now, we've got coverage of what's going on with T-Mobile and that merger with Sprint. There was some breaking news about that, so you can check that out at digitaltrends.com as far as a judge actually allowed one of the final hurdles to go through. So it looks like that merger is going to happen, but we've got all the details for that on the website for you to keep up to date on. And also, just to reiterate, we will be having our live Samsung watch party, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, where you can join us to watch what Samsung unveils. We'll be commenting live. We can take your comments live, so make sure you hit subscribe on whatever platform you're on right now, so that way you get the notification when we go live later on. But we've got more coming up right now. We've got all these interviews happening, but first, we need to do some Read 'em and Weep. So we're going to take a break, come back, we're going to read some comments, we may cry, You know, we don't know.
Laugh. Yeah.
I can't guarantee what's going to happen next. It's a very emotional moment here on Digital Trends Live. So I want everybody to stick around. Back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us wherever you are. Hit the subscribe button. That way you get the notifications when we go live, which is all the time, bringing you tech headlines, news, interviews, all that stuff. But right now, it's time for some Read 'em and Weep. I'm Greg Nibbler, here with Adrienne Warner.
Hello, I'm ready and I'm excited.
Ready to read some comments from across the internets in general, but also from our site as well. So let's go to this first one. All right. Lauren, today is the UN International Day of Women and Girls in Science. All right, to celebrate women in science, follow some of your scientists and explorers.
And engineers.
And engineers, scientists and engineers. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult. Okay,
we need some glasses for Greg.
I think we do. As a show you behind the scenes of the work they do at CERN. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes, very
Women
good.
in Science Day, I mean, that's super important. I saw that there's a huge rise of girls that are really interested in STEM signing up for STEM courses. So this is a really cool thing to celebrate.
Yeah, so that's great. So that's another good use of the internet right there. So we appreciate that one.
One check mark.
One
for a
check
good
mark for the internet.
All right, I'm going to say Sanamali Masango. Hashtag I am a physicist. I do nuclear physics to unlock the mystery of the universe via a method called column excitation. I think that's the right way to pronounce it.
I don't know either.
Another celebration of Women's Science Day. So yeah, a really cool example of a physicist doing a bunch of awesome stuff with nuclear physics, which is something that I can't even barely comprehend.
No, but also, yeah, this is a good thing, and again, a good thing for the internet to be showcasing. So we're talking about what things are trending online right now. So that one is certainly great. CERN. All right, today is the UN International Day of Women and Girls in Science. To celebrate women in science, follow some of our scientists and engineers. So going back to that, just saying, follow some of the ones that are online there.
Do you have any awesome women scientists that you follow on Twitter or other social media?
I follow all the astronauts.
Awesome.
All the astronauts.
Yes.
Yes.
Go space.
Yes. So follow everything that they post. So that's where I go for most of my stuff.
Sweet. I follow Simone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Simone Gertz.
Yes.
The robot. The S robot maker.
Yes.
Yeah, she's hilarious, and I love always finding out what she's making.
That's awesome. Cool.
Okay, Nick Merriweather on Facebook saying Apple, responding to Apple hit 27 million fine for slowing down old iPhones. Major fine. Oh.
Yeah. I see what we're doing there. So, with the actual Apple, as far as what that is, as far as the $27 million fine, that's That
yeah,
I think is
remember
pretty
that.
interesting that they're getting that. I don't think that's enough to really do much to Apple.
Well, yeah,
but
it's kind of that like, just grab some money from the bank and
Right.
throw it at them to make them happy.
somebody has that just laying around in their desk.
Exactly.
But
Apple
still,
certainly does.
yeah, still, it does showcase a little bit, as far as what they're trying to do, and it also just feeds into that old fear of like, wait, they're just slowing down our old phones. Like, it's not like the tech is going bad. But yeah, now that kind of
That's always the fear with like my with all of my Apple devices is I'm like, okay, like how often do I really need to replace it? Is it
Yeah.
on purpose? I don't know. Maybe a little bit of paranoia seated in there.
Yeah. Going to Ron Tuner, 6G and Elon Musk's brain implant neural network will be the end of us. So combining all of those into one, 6G. Before everybody starts freaking out about 6G, it's not
6G.
really a thing yet.
Good Lord.
Yeah, we don't even have 5G really rolled out much yet. So it's not a thing. Although Elon Musk's brain implant neural network, that could be the end.
That could be.
That's actually a fair
Could be.
point.
Or it could be the future.
Are you going to plug in? Will you plug in?
I don't know. I'm reading Neuromancer right now, so I'm not really looking forward to plugging in.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I want to plug into Elon's vision of the world, or maybe it's going to be amazing. Maybe it'll be
knows?
great.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess. I don't know.
Guess not.
I'm not so sure on that one.
All right. Well, speaking of Elon, here's a tweet from him feeling cute. Might delete later. Image says,
Admit nothing.
Deny everything.
Make counter
Make
counterclaims. Okay, make counterclaims. All right. So yeah, that definitely seems like a very Elon thing to be doing. So.
Well, we didn't cover.
We didn't. I'm just taking a look here at what's coming through on as far as what's trending and what we're talking about when it happens with Read 'em and Weep. There was one other thing that was trending. That's the broomstick challenge, which I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
We're gonna get in depth on it here in the second half of the news in a little bit, but it's essentially people standing brooms upright, claiming that it's the gravitational pull of the Earth that's allowing that to happen.
I thought it was going to be people riding brooms, and now I'm really
That's
sad.
almost better. I think it's
Way
witchcraft.
better.
I'm pretty sure there are witches involved in some way, shape, or form.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we'll have to get down to that and get into the magic of it. That'll be coming up in the second part of the news. But here is what we're doing now. We've got a lot of interviews coming up here on the show and a lot of things to talk about, and that's why I appreciate everybody who tunes in here to Digital Trends Live just to give you a little bit of a preview of coming up later on. We've got Luke Dormel to talk about modified moths. Yes.
Cool.
Modified moths, thank you. Appropriate response. We've got Wendy Gonzalez from Samasource talking about using artificial intelligence and how that's being utilized in different ways. We've got Ronan Guan to talk about different things that are going on in automotive technology. And, of course, the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked event, which we will be broadcasting live right here as part of Digital Trends Live with a watch party where you can join in the conversations that we get to have. It is going to be fun. We'll see what Samsung actually unveils and actually talk about it right here.
Yeah, awesome.
Talk about it live.
Can't wait to see what comes out of the event.
And Adrian, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, as always.
As
Pleasure
always,
to be here.
Yes, indeed. And thank you to everybody who's watching live. We do appreciate each and every one of you. So hit that subscribe button. Join in the conversations we get to have. Coming up next, we have Emily Shalal, the Senior Director for Consumer Strategy and Innovation at Ally Bank, talking about what they're doing with their platforms and how they're changing up different ways to interact financially online. So we've got that coming up. A lot to talk about. Stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. We do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. That way you get the notifications when we do go live and when we're sharing conversations and different tech headlines and news and interviews that we get to have here as part of the show. And we always like to talk about how tech is innovating and changing our lives. And we're going to discuss that in part and so much more. Right now, joining us, we have Emily Shalal, who's the Senior Director of Consumer Strategy and Innovation for Ally Bank. Thanks for joining us.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to give everybody just a little bit of context in case they don't know, and just to give kind of a base to talk about where we're going to go with the tech conversations we're going to have. But for Ally Bank, can we give everybody just kind of an overview of your influence on the marketplace and what all Ally does?
Sure. So Ally is a 100-year-old company that started out primarily as an automotive finance company. And 10 years ago, when we were in the midst of the financial crisis, we kind of took a look around, saw the state of consumers and the relationships that they had with their bank, and felt like there was an opportunity to do more. And that's how Ally Bank was created. So now we are a full-service bank. We have mortgages, investments, deposits, and automotive financing.
That's great. So very widespread, very wide-reaching as far as the different things that you're handling when it comes to financial services. Well, looking at the state of the industry right now, as far as that is, when we talk about online banking or digital services, what is the state of that and how are things changing?
So we continue to see that, every interaction that people have with technology informs everything that they do going forward, regardless of the industry. And so that has had profound impact on their relationship with their banks, and they continue to expect more transparency, better experiences, more control over their data, and all of that is influencing, how they interact with their bank on a daily basis.
So with that, as far as how people are banking, what are some key trends that you're seeing as far as good or bad that you're noticing, with this vast amount of data that you're able to see, some trends that you're seeing when it comes to people and consumers and how they're saving?
So we continue to see that Americans, for the most part, are still struggling with saving, and the savings rate across America is at a 60-year low last year. And most Americans may be saving a little bit, but it continues to be something that's out of sight, out of mind. And they don't necessarily have an automated savings journey. And so they're just not thinking about it as frequently as they should. And what we've seen, even if you think about the relationship that people have with their 401ks, the more that you can get people to automate, the more likely they are to stick with something over time. And that has profound impact on their overall savings goals.
So talking about the savings goals then, what are some different things that people can do to start thinking about that, to start, setting themselves up a little bit more to start saving some money?
So there's really what we've found two different segments of people. There are people who are making enough money and can be more mindful, and they can just set up a recurring transfer, maybe take some money out of their direct deposit and put it in their savings account and build their savings naturally. And then there's other people who just have a fear and can't do that. And they think, well, what if I need it? What if I can't? And so there's a tool that we've developed that help those people specifically around looking at their spending trends, looking at their income, and taking money in small increments when they have the ability to save, so that we move that money out of their checking account so they're less likely to be tempted to spend it.
So this is something that would automatically happen if you sign up for the service.
That's right. So we have an algorithm that's running in the background, and it just helps automate. So it's really a set it and forget it strategy. They turn it on, and we do all the hard work ourselves.
So I want to talk a little bit about innovation when it comes to that. I mean, you certainly having the knowledge when it comes to that side of things and seeing something that's innovative like that. How is it, I guess you talked about your algorithms, how is it that you determine what the proper amount is to take out of somebody's amount and put into their savings account?
Yeah, so it's just looking at historical data, right? So it's looking at a 30, 60, 90-day trend and figuring out where those kind of safe zones are. And so majority of people can't sit down and do that math. That mental math is way too tough on them. And so, it really is looking at each user-specific spending and income patterns and recognizing when those safe moments are.
Looking at it going forward too, and I want to get back and talk about this platform in particular and tell people how they can, take advantage of it. But we love talking about tech trends and innovation, how things are changing, and tech innovates so fast, and especially with the utilization of artificial intelligence and these different mass data algorithms that we can create. Looking forward, say like 5 years, how do you think people are going to be handling their banking? Will it be transitioning to almost all online? Will it be utilizing artificial intelligence in other ways? Is there anything that you can kind of give us a little bit of insight to what you think might be happening?
Yeah, we continue to see a shift to digital, and that's been happening for the last 10 years. It's, Ally, we've been able to capitalize on that trend. We're now the 18th largest deposit institution in the United States, and we think that will continue to show The direct bank model in general is outpacing the traditional bank deposit growth. And so, there absolutely is going to be a continued trend towards digital. And really, I think the consumer trend that we see most in everything that we do is for transparency and fair value exchange. And companies that can offer that, whether that's through AI or other tech platforms, people are looking for value. And when they can recognize that they may give you something, but in return, they're going to get value out of it, that's the trend that we see happening here and now.
And so people are just looking for more value out of what they're doing, essentially.
That's right. And we believe that technology for the sake of technology is not necessarily the trend. So we don't set out and say, hey, AI is where the trend is happening. We need to figure out the use cases. We start with talking to people and figuring out what their needs are, and then figuring out the right technology to solve those needs.
So what do you think is the right balance between utilizing, and this is a conversation that every industry is having right now. It's not just banking, it's not just financial, but finding out that right balance between utilization of artificial intelligence and utilization of actual humans, analyzing situations, and where the right way is to apply each one. What kind of a balance do you see that playing into the financial institutions?
I mean, we think it's critical. And if you even look at Ally and how we were built, we are a technology company to most people's eyes. I mean, we are a fully, digital bank, but we also have a huge human component to it, 24/7 customer service. And without that, we would not have been as successful as we are today. And so I think that people are looking and want to ensure that there is some level of human touch to the relationships that they have. And I think that will absolutely continue. And I think it is a fine balance for people. And it's where can it be digital and where do you need real human interaction to drive value? And that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, to try to find that, balance that out between those two things. I think that is important. And finding that line, I think, is something that's going to be, for a lot of industries, it'll take a little bit of while to figure that out. But it sounds like definitely for Ally, you're focusing on the human side of things too, to make sure that's a component of that interaction. And I can certainly see why people would take value out of that. Going back to this new service that you have, as far as taking some money out of your savings and having Ally handle that, can we walk people through what it's like to sign up for that? What kind of processes they go through to actually utilize that service?
Yeah, so we know that people just have a natural barrier to start saving, and we wanted to take as many of those barriers out of the equation. So we try to make it as seamless as possible. And so you don't have to have your entire relationship at Ally to use these savings tools. You just need a savings account. And once you have a savings account with us, you can link your existing checking account over to it, or you can open one with us. But we're totally open to how you want to do it. And then those tools you can start using in day one. So the whole entire process may take a couple of days at most. So you can start using it immediately and get benefit ASAP.
Is this something that adjusts as time goes on, as it learns what your habits are and what your spending is like?
Absolutely. So it's continually learning. So as your behaviors change, it's going to reinforce, what we do and build a new pattern for you. So it's continually evolving based on what you and your daily life are doing.
Well, Emily, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here to talk about this and just talk about, the future of financial institutions, the way that banking is changing. And we love talking about technological innovation and different utilizations of artificial intelligence in particular. And this sounds like a very interesting use case where it can learn and actually help people tackle some of those savings issues that they weren't doing previously. And for everybody out there, just again, to direct them where to go, what is a website I should send them to?
Yep, so Ally is very active in our social channels, so you can find us there, or you can go to ally.com.
All right, well, Emily, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here on the show today, and thanks for joining us on Digital Trends Live.
Thanks so much.
All right, again, learning about technological innovations and the way that it's changing up a lot of what we're doing right now. So something that can actually help you out long-term with your savings. I mean, we all kind of forget to put that in there sometimes, or can. So that's maybe a great use of artificial intelligence and utilizing data algorithms. All right, continuing on, we've got coming up next, Ronan Glahn, who's going to talk about some innovations in automotive technology, which is always advancing. So we're going to be discussing that here on the show. A lot coming up today. So stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us here today. We enjoy talking about technology, and we enjoy everybody who's joining the show. So hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you are on. Appreciate you being a part of this and letting us know what you want to talk about. And right now, we're going to be discussing some automotive technology, some of the innovations in that field. And to do so, we have Ronan Glahn, who's joining us right now. Ronan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks. How's it going?
Doing well. Wanted to talk about some of these big things that are happening, and I know ever since the Super Bowl, there's something that a lot of people have been discussing, and I want to get your thoughts and opinions on this. And it starts off with the Hummer coming back. Can you explain what exactly is happening here?
Yeah, Hummer is making a kind of an unexpected comeback in 2021, but it's not the actual brand that's coming back. It's going to be a GMC model, so it's going to be part of the GMC range, along with the Sierra, the Canyon, the Acadia, and so the previous Hummers were kind of V8 powered behemoths made for off-roading. They got a really bad reputation because they were not very good on the environment. They got terrible gas mileage. The new Hummer is going to be fully electric, which is going to be really cool to see.
So, and I think, going to full electric, that thing is just the idea of a Hummer being electric is so weird to me, but I guess maybe that's just kind of a sign of the times when it comes to all of these different manufacturers switching up things and going to this electric side of things. I mean, do you think this is a real actual product that people are going to want, or is this something that's more of kind of a gimmick?
I mean, it's not a gimmick. It's also not going to be a volume model. It's not going to outsell the Silverado or the F-150, but it's going to be positioned kind of against it's going to be a pickup truck. It's not going to be an SUV, and it's going to be positioned kind of against the Rivians, the Tesla Cybertruck. Those they're more lifestyle-oriented trucks. You're not going to see your power company roll up to fix a power line in a Hummer EV. But the truck market in the U.S. is so big. I mean, the F-150 has been the best-selling vehicle in America for about 43 consecutive years. So the stakes are really high because when pickup trucks and EVs finally do cross paths, and they will sooner or later, you want to be there. You want to be ready with the right technology. So that's why General Motors is investing in the new Hummer EV.
You mentioned, so with Hummer with this EV, and then you've got Rivian, Tesla with their Cybertruck. Is Ford, do you think there's any chance that Ford's going to release their F-150 this year, or is that something that's probably going to be put off for a while?
No, there's going to be an electric version of the next F-150. I believe the next F-150, we'll probably see it by the end of 2020. There's going to be a hybrid model out before the EV. I would say the EV is going to be maybe late 2021, probably early 2022, but that's when everybody else is going to come to the market. It's not going to be before then. Even if some people say they will, they're going to be unveiling cars, but production isn't going to start until about late 2021. So that's pretty good timing for Ford.
So, so it's okay. So maybe even further out than that. And then just talking about that, just with the electric vehicle, kind of the revolution and the way things are changing up, I do think it's really interesting just how many people are getting involved. And Hummer being the one, if Hummer's involved, I can't think of who else would not jump into the game when it comes to that. So it'll be interesting to see where this actually all ends up going. So again, that's talking about General Motors bringing the Hummer as an electric vehicle. And we've got an article about that at Digital Trends too that people can take a look at and kind of dig into a little bit about that electric vehicle revolution. Let's talk about some other things, some other trending stories, some other trending topics when it comes to automotive technology.
There's a new version of Cadillac Super Cruise that was announced for a 2020 launch. Now, Super Cruise it's kind of an obscure system because it launched in 2017. It's a hands-free driving system. It does not make the car autonomous. It's a semi-autonomous system, but when the right conditions are met, you can actually take your hands off the steering wheel and the car will steer for you. Now, it launched in 2017 on the CT6, which was Cadillac's flagship sedan. It did not sell very well, and CT6 production is ending in February. But it's going to become more widespread in the coming months because it's going to be available on the new Escalade that was introduced in early February, on the CT4 and on the CT5. So that's in the near-term future. In the long term, you're going to see it on other General Motors products, including trucks and SUVs. And it's kind of GM's answer to Tesla's autopilot. It doesn't work exactly the same way because it needs mapping data to know where it's at. But it's going to be it's a pretty big breakthrough, and it is one of the better systems on the market. And motorists will realize that when they test it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting just that they have this, that Cadillac has it, and clearly you've got to be a Cadillac user to probably taking advantage of this, but the fact that they're developing their own system now, talking about how it actually works, have they gone out and mapped these roads themselves, or is this something that they're utilizing other technology for? How exactly does that work when it comes down to that experience?
They've actually mapped their own roads. I mean, they started with about 130,000 miles of highways in America and in Canada. They've expanded. They've added about 70,000, I believe 70,000 more miles for the new release. So they've got about 200,000 miles of freeways mapped that you can use Super Cruise on. So the car needs to know where it's at for the system to work. It's not going to take you to a remote cabin in the Wasatch Mountains in Utah or something, but they are mapping it themselves.
So do you think that's something like looking at other companies and as they try to develop things, and like we said, we mentioned Tesla, but do you think that's something where another company is going to try to develop their own software from the beginning like this, or start utilizing things like Google Maps or Apple Maps or other kind of mapping services and use that information?
I think it depends. It depends on the company. It depends on how big of a company we're talking about. It also depends on what they're trying to achieve. But you have so Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW are three major rivals from Germany. And they actually teamed up and they bought Nokia's Here software a few years ago to use the mapping system. So mapping data is hugely important because if you have a self-driving car or a semi-autonomous car, it needs to know what's in front of it. So it needs to have radars and other sensors to know that there's a car in front of it, there's a dog in front of it, and so on. But it's also hugely helpful if it already knows that there's going to be a bend in the road or that there's going to be a speed bump or something. So they're making huge investments in mapping technology. Now, whether they use Apple or Google really depends on a case-by-case basis.
But we'll definitely start seeing more companies try to incorporate this in, because as we see more, semi-autonomous systems getting involved and eventually getting these autonomous vehicles on the road, at some point, they're all going to have that software in place, but it's going to have to be, I guess I find it interesting that it's not going to be a standard system, that everybody, even like Cadillac with their Super Cruise, Tesla with theirs, everybody's kind of got their own system. I wonder if there's going to be any kind of integration when it comes to actual safety standards.
That would make too much sense in the automotive industry. I mean, they can't even agree on charging port formats, or they're starting to. It's the kind of collaboration. Mapping is also being used as kind of a big tech advantage. So people can say, hey, I'm, company XYZ, I've got better maps than my rival. Here's why you should buy my car. It's more accurate. So it is kind of also a way to compete. So I don't see them pulling the resources. I mean, some companies, like I said, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW did buy Nokia, but an industry-wide standard would just kind of remove a comparative edge, I think. So they're not going to do that.
And there we're kind of seeing an example too of what the Cadillac Super Cruise has. So they're expanding their services. That is pretty cool though, that they're kind of developing that and utilizing different ways to put in semi-autonomous features into their cars.
And I'm surprised it's taken this long. I mean, they've had this awesome software since 2017, and they've only had it on one model that no one bought. It's not been offered on other General Motors products. I'm surprised it's taken them 3 years to roll it out, but I'm glad they're finally doing it.
So you can read more about that too at digitaltrends.com. And again, just talking about the advancement of different technological systems to employ semi-autonomous features onto all these vehicles as we see more and more companies start to do that. So that's Cadillac's Super Cruise. Well, let's go to one of the forerunners of the semi-autonomous vehicles, somebody who is definitely advocating that, and that is Tesla. And I know there's some more news about their vehicles as well.
Yeah, there's the Model Y that was unveiled. We talked about it, you and I, in 2019 when it made its debut. It was scheduled to come out in the summer of 2020, which was about a year and a half after its unveiling, which would have been not bad for Tesla. Now, there's semi-official reports claiming that production has already started. We've seen test mules kind of racking up the miles in the snowy parts of Colorado, in the hot parts of the Nevada desert. And deliveries are going to start hopefully by March of 2020, so well ahead of schedule. And that's crucial because the Model Y is Tesla's make or break model. This could outsell the Model 3. It's in a segment that's really booming in the market. It's a crossover. So Tesla has a lot riding on it, and starting deliveries early makes a lot of sense, I think.
Now, Tesla has made these kind of promises before, I feel like, this is kind of something that Elon does in all of his different ventures, where he'll say a date and then it's like that date will just pass and nothing will happen. Or he'll say a date and no, we're pushing it out another month for a reason. Like, do you think that's what's going to happen with this, or is it actually going to come out?
I think it's actually going to come out because we're seeing prototypes well ahead of schedule. This might be the one time that Musk not only meets his deadline, but actually delivers something before it. And again, I think that Tesla knows there's so much riding on this car, because not only is it going to be one of the more popular models because it's a crossover and because it's smaller than the Model X and cheaper, but the competition is finally waking up. I mean, the Model 3 was in a segment of one, the Model S was two, the Model X still is, or I guess not the Model X. Anyway, the Model Y is going to have a lot of competition from the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Audi's got kind of a comparable EV coming out soon. Nissan does too. And putting the Model Y in the $40,000 price bracket kind of places it in between the luxury car segment and the mainstream car segment. So there's a lot of competition on either end, and Tesla has to get it right.
Yeah, and I think that's just another example going back to what we talked about too with the e-trucks and the different pickups that are coming in. Everybody's getting into the game, so that means, they do have to step up and just be there and have these produced, because people can't wait forever, or if they won't be willing to wait forever if there's some other actual big name competition out there.
I think that the big difference too is that, like I said earlier, the Cybertruck, the Hummer EV, the Rivian R1T, they're not going to be mainstream models. I mean, they're going to be, people are going to buy them because they look cool, frankly. It's interesting to put them on Instagram. You get likes, you get follows. The Model Y is a car that people will actually buy to commute in, to take their kids to soccer in as their only car. And this is a volume-oriented car with a huge sales potential. That's, I think, the big difference between the kind of the electric trucks and the electric SUVs.
Well, the Tesla Model Y, so maybe coming out actually early this year, due out early this year. Yeah, so we'll have to see actually if it does roll out, but still pretty big entrance into the EV market, and we'll have to see what happens with that. And we've got all the details at digitaltrends.com as well, where people can take a look at what's going on with the Model Y and everything else that's happening in automotive technology. Ronan keeps us up to date. And Ronan, I want to say thank you once again for joining us here to talk about some automotive technology.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so check out all of Ronan's articles at digitaltrends.com. And we have a lot more coming up on the show today. I want to remind everybody we've got a live Samsung Galaxy Unpacked watch party. It's going to happen at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So that'll be happening right here, where myself, Caleb Dennison, will be discussing what is going on with this event as it unfurls live in front of us. But let's talk about this. We've got more coming up here on the show. We've got Wendy Gonzalez, the interim CEO at Samasource, to talk about artificial intelligence and how we're managing different data sets and how that should actually be utilized. So we're going to talk to her about that, and that's coming up next. So stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button. And of course, share the show. If you have a favorite segment, let other people know about it. That's always a great way to get these conversations to get going. And in particular, right now, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We all know that it's being utilized in many different ways, but how should it be utilized? Now that we're able to do this, what are the ethics behind it? What are some different things that people should be considering when instituting policies with artificial intelligence and data algorithms? We're going to talk about that and more. To do so, joining us right now, we have the interim CEO from Samasource. We have Wendy Gonzalez. Wendy, thank you for joining us here.
Thanks, Greg. Good to be here.
Let's talk about Samasource in general, and I want to give everybody just kind of a little bit of context about what it is that the company does.
Sure. So at Samasource, we are a high-quality, secure training data provider for the Fortune 500, basically. And what training data is before a machine can learn how to see, hear, or speak, it needs to be trained with structured data. And that's what our company provides.
So trained and structured data, to kind of get into that and just give it a little bit more of an idea of what that means, can you give us kind of a brief overview of what trained or structured data is?
Absolutely. So let's use the example of autonomous vehicles. Before a car can learn how to drive itself, it needs to actually be able to interpret what is a roadway, right? So as a company, we may see exactly something like this to where cars, pedestrians, lane markings, traffic signs, they all need to be both identified as well as labeled so that the computer can then understand that in fact is a car. But it is actually quite a bit more complicated than that. So as an example, a vehicle may be a car, but a vehicle could be a bicycle, it could be a semi-truck, it could be a pickup truck. And so there's actually quite a bit of complexity associated with defining your training data strategy.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of different data parameters too associated with that, with the size, with the speed, what the likely movements could be, from a car versus a bike versus a truck. And so when it comes to that, and you have this structured and trained data, and that's a great analysis. Thank you. A great analogy there for that. Using that, then companies could take that data, say, and then have a basis to go on to then build on top of that. Would that be how that would work?
That's exactly right. That's exactly how machine learning works, is that the models ingest the data, they get a lot smarter, but they're always going to be edge cases, right? So a good example of this is, you can define a roadway, cars on the horizon. What happens when your vehicle sees a billboard that has a car on it, as an example? So there are a surprising number of complexities associated with it. What happens is the smarter the algorithm gets, then you start focusing on the edge cases, like that example.
Well, talking about utilizing this data and different ways that people, now that so many companies have access to mass amounts of data like this, and companies are starting to institute artificial intelligence or figuring out ways that it can help their businesses, what are some concerns and some things that they should take into consideration before instituting different algorithms and AI platforms for their services?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So I'll touch upon a couple of things. One is bias. So I always love this example. If dogs were the one training self-driving cars, then they may not detect cats, right? So understanding your complete scope of every and all situations. In the case of autonomous vehicles, that's different driving terrains, as you can imagine, left side of the road, right side of the road. So it's actually quite complex. And if you don't keep in mind the variety of data that's really required to train your data, you could end up with a faulty system. So another example of that might be safety, as an example. And if you don't detect people of all kind of shapes, sizes, and colors, you could actually have a faulty system. So identifying both your data collection strategy and scope of data to ensure that you reduce bias is a really, really important part of the strategy. And to not really underestimate how important the training data is to your entire model, because ultimately, without high quality training data, you can't actually bring a model to production.
Yeah, so a lot of factors that people need to really think about. And I feel like, it's not like this is a brand new technology by any means, but as more people are starting to understand how it can be utilized, definitely some things that they need to be considering when it comes to that. Looking forward, what are some of the trends that you see especially from your standpoint of being really at the forefront of all of this, what kind of trends do you see being instituted here in the next, like, say, 1, 2, or maybe even 5 years when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Well, the amazing thing about this technology is it can be used in so many different ways. So we have a couple of really cool projects as an example to where, well beyond things like autonomous vehicles and e-commerce and, augmented or virtual reality, there's a lot of really interesting things happening in biotech. So at biotech and robotics, to where there is an opportunity to actually have improvements in both health and safety with the implementation of AI. But in addition to that, we've worked on a couple of really, really cool projects as well. As an example, conservation. So we had this amazing project with Vulcan, which is this fantastic and innovative organization founded by Paul Allen, to where we actually worked with them to develop basically train an algorithm that supports reduction of elephant poaching. So we had thousands of images of African safari where we were able to literally tag elephant butts to identify elephant movement, to identify poaching movement. And that technology now with drones, instead of the rangers having to cover all that ground by land, they actually have drones that then signal where the poaching activity is going to happen, and they can more immediately stop the poaching activity. So the kind of levels of problems you can solve with AI are pretty limitless, and we see the need for sort of training data and that kind of quality judgment being something that's going to be around for many years. So we're just really excited to see all the different applications.
I'm actually familiar with that process that you have with Vulcan. We've talked about that before you're on the show, just how great that is. I have to say it's the first time I think elephant butts has ever been used on Digital Trends Live, but what an interesting use case, though, for artificial intelligence and just figuring out, how we can solve some of these big, massive problems that we have, like poaching. It's just really exciting to see where this is all going and look at the positive situations handling all of this. Well, for everybody who wants to know more about Samsung and everything that you're doing, Samasource, and what you're doing with it, could you please let us know where I can direct people?
Yes, you can direct people to samasource.com. We'd love to have people come look at our website and also get an opportunity to really take a look at our technology. None of this is really possible. I mentioned the kind of human in the loop and the judgment, but to be able to get to the scale of training data of like billions of frames or billions of points, it's really important to have even machine learning baked into the technology platform. So please come to our website. We'd love for you to learn more, and thank you.
Thanks for being here on the show. Really appreciate you joining. Looking forward to having another conversation another time too about this. And thanks for being here on Digital Trends Live.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
You too. All right, so really fascinating there, talking to Wendy from Samasource and just how they're using artificial intelligence and some of the different use cases of that. So we've got more, though. We've got to get to a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about something called the Broomstick Challenge. I'm going to explain a little bit about what this actually is. You've probably seen it trending. I'm going to tell you whether it's real or not, and that's coming up next. Plus, we've got some more space news. We've got more interviews. We've got more things to discuss. All of this happening while we're broadcasting live. So stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us wherever you're watching. We do appreciate it, so hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of show left today, but right now, it's time to talk about something that is trending online where we explain it for you and let you know whether it's real or not. And I am talking about the broomstick challenge. You've probably seen this trending immensely on social media, in particular on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. Everybody's talking about it. So what is it? Well, let me give you just a base explanation of what we're talking about. So this is something that is not the first time where this has happened. This circles back around every couple of years or so, and it has to do with this idea that on the spring equinox or the autumnal equinox, that during this time, that for whatever reason, Earth's gravity allows you to stand things up straight, in particular, broomsticks. Yes, brooms are able to stand up straight because of the gravitational pull of whatever that allows this to happen during those particular times. And this time, it all started because there was a viral post that went up where somebody claimed that NASA announced this and said that because of that, that one could stand this up. So you saw this yesterday, a whole bunch of people, millions of people, posting these pictures of brooms standing up straight. Here's the thing, it's BS. So, a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not the spring equinox. The spring equinox is on March 20th this year. We're way away from that, so that has nothing to do with it. Also, there's no science behind this. There's no reason. All that is just balancing a broom. You just take a broom and you just balance it correctly, and it will stand up on its own any time of the year. I'm just going to let you know that. Now, you see some of the posts are actually pretty funny when it comes down to it, but this is one of those internet crazes, these internet memes that go nuts where it is just not true. So, taking a look at this. Number one, NASA said that they didn't have anything to do with it. They did not ever post anything about this. One person online said that. It's believed, and then that's how that went crazy. Paula Abdul's even into it. Like, okay, this is, oh, I don't even want to get into that. But Paula Abdul back now with the broom challenge. So there we go. So looking at it from a scientific standpoint, again, there's no scientific basis for this at all. It's really just completely untrue. And there's even some interviews that talk about this going all the way back to 2012, where a Louisiana State University professor disproved this and actually traced it back a little bit to see where it came from. And this is one of the things, talking about where this actually took off from. It goes all the way back to essentially historical China, where there was this idea that during these times, during a spring equinox, during the autumnal equinox, that you could actually take an egg and balance it straight up. Now, this is true. You can take an egg and balance it straight up if the egg has a flat end on it. But it has nothing to do with gravity, nothing to do with the equinoxes at all. So this is another one of those where it's neat that it went out. Hopefully some people trick some people into thinking that this is because of a gravity situation, but it is not. It's BS, but that is what we're letting you know about. That is your Twitter meme of the day explained. All right, continuing on here with Digital Trends Live. Let's talk about some space stuff, because I always end up talking about space stuff. Why not? It's trending, but this is pretty exciting. It has to do with SpaceX. Now, we all know SpaceX's goal, in part, is to send humans back up to the International Space Station. That's like goal number one before going to the moon and then, of course, conquering Mars and turning it into Elon's new homeworld. So they want to get people back up to the space station. Right now, the way it works is we actually utilize Russian rockets to send our astronauts to the International Space Station, because that's what we have. They're the only ones. We don't have the space shuttle program anymore. NASA doesn't actually have a way to send people up there. So with SpaceX and this partnership, they're looking to send people up with the SpaceX Dragon Crew capsule. And this is utilizing their rockets that they have and the Falcon rockets. So we've seen some tests. We've seen some different ways that they're trying to get this up. We saw the test just recently where they tested out what would happen if something goes wrong. This is when they intentionally blew up one of their rockets. So the Dragon Crew capsule sits on top of a rocket. It goes up. The rocket, the booster rocket's what gets it up into space. But they blew one of those up, and then with that, they had this propulsion system that shot the Dragon Crew capsule away from the rocket itself, and then utilized a parachute system, which would essentially get the people back down, the people inside, safely. So that's very important. Safety is a huge issue. And this is something they've been working on for a while, but now we have word, there's rumors, that we may be actually seeing a crewed flight test of this Dragon capsule sooner than later. Now, there was speculation that this would happen later on this year, but now we're seeing maybe as early as May. May of this year, we could see humans sent up in there as a test. Now, this probably wouldn't be going to the International Space Station. They got to test it out first. We don't know exactly what they would do, but That's what we're talking about. So that's a pretty big moment when it comes to space travel. When this does happen, when we see this test, that means we're that much closer to having, number one, having these launches back on U.S. soil. This would be from a U.S. company, sending people up to the International Space Station, but also it opens up that whole commercialization of space that's going to be happening. It's going to be happening. This is bound to happen, where a private company is sending people to the International Space Station. That's something that hasn't happened yet. I just want to reiterate that with all of this talk about where we're at with space travel and where we're at with all of these companies getting involved. It hasn't happened. This would be the first. This would be a monumental moment when it comes to space travel. So if we actually get to see a test on May 2020, that's huge. Now, I also wouldn't be too surprised if this got pushed back a little bit, just because that's tends to happen with these. They don't want to rush things. Clearly, if something's not ready, it'll get pushed back. But if it's even in that range, that's pretty cool. And we've got more details about that at digitaltrends.com, so follow up, read along with it. It's an exciting year, I think, that we're going to have here when it comes to space travel. All right, final thing we're going to talk about. This is just something that I found interesting. It's at digitaltrends.com. I want to remind everybody, we've got lots of tech on there, lots of things that you can read about and check up on. And this is something coming from Ford, and it talks about safety. It's the safety between people who are riding bikes on the road and vehicles. Now, where I live, here in Portland, this is a big concern, but I think that's probably a concern everywhere you go, where you have, bicyclists get hit, or they're not seen, or they're not communicating, or different things that can happen with that. And certainly it's not all the bike's fault. You have cars who just don't see them, and obviously the car is the more dangerous situation, more dangerous vehicle on the road. This is a way to maybe mitigate that a little bit, and it's called an emoji jacket. And the reason is because that's what it does. It's a big jacket where on the back you have lit up in LEDs different emojis. Now, why emojis? Well, Ford is saying that and this is from one of their statements, basically that emojis are a fundamental part of how we use language. And this is utilizing a professor actually who talked about that as well. And they're saying with these emojis, you can then also be able to use traffic signals where it can signal left, signal right. And they put out a whole video kind of showcasing some of those different ways that this could be used. And I love the idea of the turn signals that they showcased, where you can see it and let people know which direction you're going to be turning. And I think that's a good use. There's also a caution symbol that can go on there. And they want to keep it very simple, not to where you can use all these different emojis, but you would actually have it hooked up right there to your handlebar, so you can see that. You've got a few different ones you can use. They're not going to let you customize them yet, but still kind of cool, and could actually really definitely make an impact on safety. I think you would have to have it to where it can be put onto other jackets. It can't be just this jacket that you would wear. But if they can come up with a way that you can actually put that on and modify a jacket that you already have, or just wear it like a vest over what you already have, I think that could be a really big safety feature that you could add on when it comes to riding on bikes. Because let's face it, accidents happen. You don't want that to happen. Maybe this could help prevent that. All right, we've got a lot to talk about here on Digital Trends Live as we continue through the show, and we are just giving you all the tech that you can handle. So coming up next, though, we've got another interview. We've got Teresa DeSuyo, who is going to be talking about Qustodio. That's their platform, because it is, and I don't know if you knew this, it's Safer Internet Day. So we're going to talk about different safety features online, or different ways that you can be safe when you're going onto the internet, especially for families and children out there. So we're going to discuss that and more coming up here. Stick around, back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. I appreciate everybody who's joining us. Whatever platform you're watching on, whatever time you're watching, that's great. Join us here for these shows that we get to have and these conversations that we get to have around technology and how it's utilized. And today, in particular, is Safer Internet Day. So this is a day today where we're talking about different ways to be safe online. And to do so, joining us right now, we have Teresa DeSuna, who is the digital family and screen time expert for Qustodio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to give everybody some context. Can we talk about what Qustodio is and what it is that you do there with your platform?
Sure. Custodia, what we offer is a parental control app, and our brand stands for digital well-being. So it's finding balance in your families and how you manage that screen time amongst each member. And we provide visibility to parents to see what their children are accessing, how much time they're spending, and then encourage conversations between parent and child in order to make necessary adjustments that would adapt to their own digital lifestyle.
So would this be like, just to understand it completely too, is this like a hub essentially where somebody can, if you have a parent and they can monitor and access what their kids are accessing online?
Sure, the way it works, you download the app onto your device or your laptop where you want to manage the dashboard and the controls and the parameters and rules. And then you download the app onto your children's devices. And in that way, you have full control and you can monitor this remotely. You don't need to go into the child's device in order to change any of the parameters or configure any of the rules or limits that you'd like to adjust for each child.
Nice, you can remotely handle that. That seems like that would probably be a big advantage for parents that they don't have to actually get the device back to do this. They can do it from wherever they are.
Absolutely.
So taking a look there from there, and since it is Safer Internet Day, this being a big day here to talk about that and talk about the safety concerns online, what are some of the biggest concerns that parents have right now when it comes to their children online?
I would say their biggest concern is not really knowing what's out there. They don't know where their children are. They also feel a little bit hesitant to jump right in. They admit or they are shy to admit or embarrassed to admit that they might not be too tech savvy. So that's the main concern. What's out there? What is my children or what are my children engaging in? What risks might there be as they chat or enter different types of content sites? So these are the main concerns that we see, and also how much time they're spending. Sedentary time versus physical active time, and sometimes children get into this rabbit hole of watching videos, watching clips, posting things, and these would be the main concerns: how much time they're spending and where they're spending that time.
And definitely things to be concerned with because, like you said, that unknown of not knowing where it's out there and just there's always something new coming up, always new content that's out there. And so looking at it from that standpoint, what are some important things that parents can do to help mitigate some of those concerns or at least really get a better idea of what's happening out there?
Well, the first thing we encourage is to have these conversations with your children before they're given access or put a device in their hand. It's always easier to talk through and rather than give a privilege and take away later. And the first is to to have a conversation with them as to what they'll be doing, why they're doing it, and how much time they believe they'll be spending engaging in these apps or spending time on these apps or browsing. That's the first step, and coming to an agreement. That would be absolutely the first step, is having those conversations that make it easier to guide your child through that process.
Is there a way to, is there a process of both educating kids, and I know kids are going to be kids because they're going to go find whatever, if there's a loophole, they're going to figure it out. But a process like a combination between that and having, some control over where they go?
Yeah, absolutely. What we offer at Custodio does offer the ground, if you will, under the child's feet and also the parents' feet, as they get used to what they're actually using online. This gives them visibility with the reporting, what they're searching. They can control, filter, block, or be alerted to what they're accessing. The screen times also can be regulated and limited and restricted and adapted to what you expect your child to be doing at a certain time of day. For example, blocking the time when they should be in school. Also blocking an hour before sleep time. It's very important that children get the right amounts of sleep in order to perform in the next day in school. So that in that way, these type of monitoring or screen time management tools allow for that visibility, and parents can talk. What we encourage is on a weekly basis or periodically, or when a child is actually connected, just asking questions. So, what are you seeing now? Um, have you had a good experience, a bad experience? Have you seen anything strange? And along with that, making the adjustments together. What do you think if we allocate the time, distribute the time that you're spending on YouTube over the course of the week, as opposed to concentrating into one day, and discussing, well, you really manage your own time very well, so I'll give a little bit more time this weekend, or offer, let's go to the movies. It doesn't always have to be that tech reward that's involved in that conversation.
What kind of age range do you recommend for use cases with Qustodio?
Well, it depends on every single family. In my case, I have 3 children, and each of them has their own needs, not just because of age, but because of their needs. Our 12-year-old didn't get his family phone, let's say, until he had to go to soccer practice on his own. So just those 2 days alone, he had the phone at those moments that he needed to be able to communicate with us. So it's based on your needs, the responsibility level of each child, the autonomy, their ability to absorb the information and have that digital resilience and preparedness to deal with different content. But age-wise, it has to do with these different parameters. And psychologists also agree with this. It's level preparedness. Now, there are different studies out there. Certainly, the World Health Organization did publish a study recently. Children under 2 years old should definitely have less than 1 hour of stationary time. The rest should be spent in active time. And as they get older, that gets adjusted. And at the same time, screen time is not the same. There could be screen time where it's productive screen time, creative screen time, or screen time where they're just going down that rabbit hole again and just getting stuck and getting addicted to what they're seeing. So these different parameters of preparedness, responsibility, and need are things to keep in mind when you give access to a child.
Well, Teresa, I want to let everybody know, too, for those out there that want to utilize Custodio's services and utilize this platform to monitor what's going on, what's the best place to send them?
Qustodio.com. We're also on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you don't mind, I'd like to offer people who are celebrating around the world Safer Internet Day. We do have a promotion going on. It's Speak Up 15, and you get 15% off any of the premium plans, allowing you to protect the devices and your children online.
Nice. Speak Up 15. So great. So a discount right there on Custodio's services. And thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about this for Safer Internet Day and everything that's going along with that, and different ways that we can monitor the activity of children and make sure everything's a little bit safer out there. Thanks for being here on Digital Trends Live.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, let's continue on here with the show. So fascinating right there, talking about different ways that we can, monitor online activity. Let's go to this. We've got one more interview for you, and then we're going to take a break before the Samsung Unpacked event. So don't forget, 11 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, less than an hour now, about a half hour from now, we're going to be having the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked event live here on whatever platform you're watching right now. That's where you're going to watch it. So you can join us for that. But coming up next, we've got Luke Dormel to talk about genetically modified moths. Yep, genetically modified moths. I think we're talking about Mothra. I'm not entirely sure, but we're going to be covering that next. So stick around. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us as we talk about cutting-edge technology and different ways that it can change our lives. But what about crops? What about genetically modifying things, using science and tech to change the way that things are grown or make things better? We're going to talk about that and a lot more. To do so, though, our best representative here for that is Luke Dormel, who is joining us right now to talk about genetically modified moths. Luke, can you please explain what this article is that you've got up here at digitaltrends.com?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy these conversations because I think that they, I guess, kind of highlight the breadth of what we write about. I think last time we were talking about nanoparticles that eat your insides for your own good, and this week we're talking about, as you say, genetically engineered moths, or Franken moths, as I saw you had written on Twitter.
Yes.
So this is a project by Cornell University. They've been working with scientists from a biotech company called Oxitec to essentially find an environmentally friendly way of sort of limiting the amount of damage that's done to crops each year by diamondback moths, which add up to sort of billions of dollars worth of damage. And so essentially what they have done is they've been working on self-limiting technology. They teamed up with a genetic engineering company, and essentially they kind of figured out a way to create large numbers of sterile moths, which they could then release into the wild. And the sterile male moths would then mate with female moths, and they would subsequently produce no offspring. And so essentially you kind of get a drastic reduction in moth populations over kind of one generation. And you can do all of this without having to use insecticides, which is kind of, anytime you can avoid pumping enormous amounts of sort of chemicals onto crops that ultimately we're going to eat or are going to in other ways kind of negatively impact the environment, that's probably a good thing. So it's a really interesting example of genetic engineering in action. And I suppose it's kind of very different to most of the time people hear genetic engineering and crops. We think it's the crops themselves being sort of genetically modified. In this case, it is the moths that we want to avoid eating those crops.
Right, and that's such a huge issue. I mean, I feel like there's a ton of different things that when it comes down to that, as far as insect issues. And here in the Northwest, we have the gypsy moth, which like eats trees, and is a big, huge issue and concern for that. And then you've got this moth that's attacking these crops. So when it comes to the genetic modification, what are some of the ramifications of that outside? Have they done any kind of studies as far as any negative effects of doing something like that?
So far, this is still, they have done field tests. They're continuing to do field tests to kind of explore, I guess, some of the other issues that could potentially arise from this. The moths themselves are non-toxic and non-harmful. The gene doesn't persist over multiple generations. As I say, it removes the fact that you would normally have to solve this issue with insecticides. So far, it's looking like this is a pretty good response. It's actually a similar approach. Similar ideas have been put forward as far back as the 1950s. Previously, similar studies have been done using X-rays to make moths sterile. But this is an approach which I think is easier to produce large numbers of moths for this kind of work. So as I understand it, this is kind of part of a longer term solution potentially to this problem, but one which in a lot of ways is kind of favorable. And I know that this same technology, Oxitec, when I started writing this piece, the name really kind of rang a bell with me, and I kind of went back and I kind of read previous articles that we've published here at Digital Trends, and a few years ago they were doing something very similar with mosquito populations during Zika virus. So I think that this could potentially be applied to a lot of maybe kind of species of sort of insects that go beyond kind of moths. So it has kind of broad potential application.
Yeah, I love that idea. I was just going to bring that up. Mosquitoes or any other kind of pest or invasive species, maybe in a certain area, that this could be a way to do that without the pesticide concern, because there are so many concerns when it comes to pesticides. But if you really are just affecting this one, moth population, that seems like a pretty great thing. Like, what are the next steps for them? They've done some field tests, like you said, but what are the next steps to actually utilizing this in a mass way?
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, they have carried out field tests already. They're currently planning more field tests, which are going to kind of look at, I guess, kind of drill down on the data that they got from this initial test and examine sort of how, with this recent study, they have shown how essentially this can kind of curb the sort of the moth populations within a generation. They're going to kind of continue studying this and presumably kind of drill down on some of the concerns that you kind of mentioned earlier. I don't know in terms of the plans to make this a sort of a commercially available solution that could be used by farmers, but certainly I think that the fact that this is already something that's being field tested rather than just limited to sort of a hypothetical lab study kind of bodes well for its potential future applicability.
It's definitely fascinating, and like you said at the beginning of this, I love having these conversations, talking about the breadth of stuff that we do cover, but looking at things like that could really make a huge difference, and seeing where the science is out there. And so everybody can take a look at that, digitaltrends.com. Check out that article. Check out everything else that Luke writes. There's always something interesting every single day that goes up on there. And Luke, as always, appreciate you being here on the show.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, and that's Luke Dormel talking about that genetically modified moths and thinking about that and extrapolating that kind of data to see where else that could go, what other kind of changes that could make. Really interesting stuff. And again, I thank everybody who joins us here on Digital Trends Live every single weekday. So we are not done. So here's the thing. We're going to be back in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so with the Samsung Unpacked watch party. So this is what's going to be happening. We've got the Samsung presentation. We're going to watch that live with you. Then we'll have our own Corey Gaskin, who's on the ground at the event, and we'll go live to him with his first impressions of the new phones and devices. So all this stuff that Samsung's going to be announcing, we're going to have Corey, who's there, along with Jeremy Kaplan, and we're going to have Corey live here on the show. So we're just taking a quick break. So wherever you're at, Just stick with us or hit that subscribe button. You'll get the notification when we pop back up live again in about 20 minutes or so. Tomorrow on Digital Trends Live, Bill Smith, the CEO of Landing, will be on the show. Landing is like the Airbnb of corporate travel, so it offers up furnished apartments for rentals for longer-term living. So tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for that for Digital Trends Live. But stick around, because back in about 25 minutes, we'll have our Samsung Galaxy Unpacked live coverage, a watch party with you. You can hear our opinions, we'll read your opinions, so stick around back here in just a little bit with more Digital Trends Live.